Welcome to GausRoth Tutorials. I'm GausRoth, and today we're going to look at player feedback. And what I mean by that, I mean your visual feedback, your audio feedback, and your haptic feedbacks. And in order to demonstrate this, we're going to go into build mode and grab a trigger. And we're just going to place it right in front of our guy here. Let's make it a little bit bigger. There we go. And we're going to grab the cube, make it the same size. Just move it back a little bit, and then we're going to need a script. So let's go back in, go to Gizmos, grab a script. You can just bring it right here. Change the name. It's always important to change the name of your scripts. Let's call this player feedback. Right, so before we get too crazy into it, we're just going to attach our script to our trigger, and we're just make sure player is set and enabled is on. And all we're going to do is we're going to create a number value. We're just going to call it counter. Since it's set to player, we need to go to events, scroll down to player events. When trigger is entered by player, we'll set our counter to counter +1. So our counter will increase by 1 every time the trigger is entered. And then we will put in a debug so I can print out our counter. And what will happen is, if I reset it, go in and I hit this trigger, our counter increases by 1. The player does not know. So like in edit mode, I can see the console that it increased by 1, but the player doesn't know it even hit a trigger. So if we go into our build mode, look at our counter, it shows 1, 2, 3, and that's great, that's working. However, again, the player has no way of knowing. So we're going to make some additions. So we will grab an object variable. We're going to call this one cube. We'll grab another one, and we'll call this VFX. Another one for sound, so SFX. And then another one for text, so object, we'll just call it text. And we're going to need a boolean, so let's just go and call it toggle. And then when trigger is entered by player, what we'll do is we'll check if, get rid of this debug, we don't need that anymore. We're going to check if toggle is true. If it's true, we're going to do something. If it's false, we'll do something else. And what we're going to do is we're going to set the color of our cube. So we're going to go to actions, set object color. So if it's on already, what we're going to do is we're going to set the color of the cube to red. We also need to do this on world start. Else, we will set it to green. So we'll just adjust our color quick. And then there's a couple other things we want to do. We want to play a sound. And if the sound is going to be different, then you would have to create two variables and then place them in here separately. However, since we're just going to use one sound effect, we can do this. And then the same thing with the visual effect. We only have one, so we don't need to place them in the same thing. But we're also going to display text on our text object. So we can drop in our VFX and our SFX. And we're going to display our counter, so we have to cast. So go to values, go to type casting, and we're going to cast a variable as a string, and then we'll just drop in our counter. So now we need to find a sound effect, find a visual effect, and grab our text gizmo. So we can close out of this, but we also need to set our toggle. And the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to set toggle to not itself. And what this does is if toggle is true, it'll set it to false, and if it's false, it'll set it to true. Right, so let's go into, let's clear that. We need, go into build, go to gizmos. We need a text gizmo, which we can put right above that. We need a sound, and I'm just going to type in hit, and I think I'm below one of these. Pebble hit. Yeah, pebble hit sounds good. And we'll drop that right there for now. And then we need another gizmo, which this one's going to be a particle effect gizmo. And we're going to change this one to hit ring. And we might need to resize this, so let's turn this guy on looping, play on start. We're just going to play, I just want to see, yeah, so it's a little small, so let's just make it a little bigger. Too much big. That might work. Okay, so let's center that. We need to open up our text and that, open up our trigger, and now we have to drop in these variables. So our particle effect, we need to drop into VFX, close out of that. Our text, we'll go to text. Our pebble hit will go to SFX, and then we need to open up our cube, grab our cube variable, and notice how I have it set to none right now, and when I drop it in, it's going to change it to animated. It has to be animated for us to change the color of it like this. So we can close out of that, close out of that. I do need to turn that off. So let's turn off looping, don't play on start, and let's open up our sound effect quick just to see what's going on here. I'm going to turn the volume up all the way so we can hear it. We don't want global. We want the minimum distance to be 0 just in case the player is really close. However, we don't want to be able to hear it if we're 100 meters away. That is not good. So let's set it to something like, I don't know, 2.5. We can close out of that. And then there is one other thing I forgot to add to player feedback, and that is the haptics. So we're going to go to actions, scroll down to player, and then play haptics on player controller. We're just going to drop this in right here. You can have it set to play on the right hand or the left hand, or both by dropping another one. We need our player variable. 10 milliseconds is really quick. I mean, you won't even feel it. So we're going to increase that to about 100. And now when I reset the script, we have a red cube. We don't see any of the other gizmos. We don't see the trigger. We're playing a game. We come up to it, and bam, what happened? You know, I can see it. The player knows the cube went green or red. We have a counter of how many times it's happening. We can hear that it's changing, and we have this hit ring that also helps indicate that we pushed something. And we're also feeling haptics on our controller. So when we hit it, we can feel it. And this is very important, and it brings a lot of life to your worlds. So this is very important to add. Whether you don't need to have all of them attached to every action because that'll end up being very expensive. Just a simple changing the cube to green, that way the player knows that they did something. Having the haptic feedback is really cheap because it's just one line of code. And that is pretty much all I have for this video. And just to go over the script one more time, we have a toggle boolean, we have a text object, a sound effect object, a visual effect object, the cube object, and then our counter number. When world is started, we're setting cube color to red. When trigger is entered by player, we're going to set our counter to counter +1. If toggle is true, we're going to set color to red. So if it's already on, we're going to turn it off by turning it to red. If it's off, we're going to turn it to green. We're going to set toggle to not itself. So if it's true, then it becomes false. If it's false, it becomes true. We're playing haptics on the right controller for the player for 100 milliseconds with medium strength. You can change the strength and then the type. We are then playing a sound on the SFX object, playing the visual effect on the VFX object, and then we're displaying our counter as a string on our text object. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns about this video, or have suggestions for a future video, please let me know in the comment section below. Also, if you liked the video, if you learned something, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you are notified of all my future videos. I try to come out with videos every Monday. Sometimes things happen, life gets in the way, but I try to be consistent. And yeah, thanks for watching and have a good one.